Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Friday night photography session. My name is Nick DePasquale, for those of you whom I have not met yet. And Steph, you're on, I've taken you off mute now.
Okay.
Okay, great. So everybody, I would like to introduce to you a very good friend of mine and also fellow photographer, Stephanie Cuneo. Stephanie and I met at a Joe Barabin workshop in Sicily 4 years ago in May. Both Stephanie and her husband Larry live out in LA, and they've become very good friends in a very short period of time for us. Stephanie is a wonderful photographer and a very inspirational photographer, and that's kind of the theme tonight, is that what inspired Stephanie to actually become a photographer, and also what inspires her and captures her interest when she's going to take a photograph. So in the first part of the session, I'm just going to talk a little bit with Steph about how she started and what really interests her. And then Stephanie's going to get into a slide presentation of showing you some of her work and some of the stories behind each one of her work. So Stephanie, welcome, and thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Nick. First of all, I want to say thank you for inviting me to do this. It's the first presentation I've ever done, so I'm a little bit anxious about it. But I'm very excited to show all of you what catches my eye and how I get to my final shot. I also think all of you are very fortunate to have Nick as an instructor. He's an excellent photographer, and he always likes to share what he knows. He's our go-to guy when we're on workshops. Anything that somebody has a problem with, they go and ask Nick. And that's how I got started.
Yeah, so I paid Steph to say that. So thanks, Steph. I'll send the check in the mail.
True.
See, as most of my students know, I have this sense of humor that I got to let them know when to laugh. So, but the downside of a Zoom video conference is that you don't get that instantaneous feedback. But great. So can you tell us a little bit about, I know in 2011, that's when you started really becoming a serious photographer. And can you talk a little bit about how you started and what inspired you to get started?
Sure. I think what happened is my husband retired, and that gave us chance to travel, which we always like to do. And that year we planned two big trips, one to China and another one to Africa. So for some reason, I decided to upgrade and went to the camera store and bought a DSLR. The salesperson showed me a Nikon and a Canon, and I picked the Nikon just because I liked the way it felt. Also, then we went off to Africa, and when I came home, I had a lot of questions. I didn't really know how to use the camera. I had set it on auto before we left because I couldn't understand the manual. And when I was going into the camera store, I saw a poster advertising a talk by a National Geographic photographer, Scott Stolberg. So I thought that might be a good way to learn something. And a few days later, I went to the talk, and Scott had a presentation of his photographs with music in the background, and that really did it for me. I knew I wanted to know more about photography. And Scott also mentioned that he was leading a workshop to Burma, which piqued my interest. So I asked him after his presentation whether he'd consider taking a beginner with him, and he said he would, but I needed to learn something about photography. And he taught at an online school, and he recommended that I take some classes, which I started doing. I had about 6 months to get some knowledge and went off to Burma with Scott. It was fabulous, and took a few more workshops with him. And then the following year, I met Joe Barabin. He spoke to you a couple of weeks ago, and he also teaches at the online school. I took his workshop when he had one in Los Angeles, And I was so impressed. I've been going on workshops with Joe ever since, and that's how Nick and I met each other. And Joe's also my mentor and Nick's mentor. He's my Nick tonight, though, Joe.
Great, thanks, Steph. And so what I've done is I've switched the screen over to your website, and which is a gorgeous galleries in there, and you have some you know, very huge bodies of work. And I just want to maybe if you can briefly describe a couple of them, what the theme is behind it, and then folks, the themes behind the individual galleries, like 3 or 4 of them. And so folks, when they look at your website later, they can kind of have some background for it. And everybody, her website is Stephanie Cuneo, CUNEO.com. So Steph, what's the Moments Gallery all about?
Well, these are all found moments. None of them are set up or staged in any way. I like the spontaneity of just finding the special moments. Decide really in the editing process whether an image is going to make it to my moments folder because I feel like they're really special.
And what's the purpose of in having the photographs in black and white?
Well, for me, I think that black and white just gets to the soul of the person. Doesn't have any distractions of color. I don't actually shoot these in black and white. I convert them in with Silver FX Pro afterwards.
Cool. And we're actually going to see some of these in your presentation later. So Paris and the Winter Light is a new series for you, right?
It is. I shot these in December of last year. It was a really extraordinary experience for me because I love Paris in the wintertime because it feels like I'm back in the 1930s. The architecture is just old architecture, and everybody's bundled up in the wintertime, so you don't see a bunch of shorts and tank tops. And this time when I went, I decided to actually, I haven't talked about my equipment yet, but I have a Nikon mirrorless, and I'm able to have choose scenes, and I chose a scene mode. I chose monochrome. So when I looked through the viewfinder, I was seeing in black and white. It was just extraordinary. It was fabulous.
That's great. And let's see, Japan Abstracts and Architecture is another cool one. And this one's in color.
Yeah, total color. Um, I shot these last fall when I was in Japan, and I noticed when I was editing that I had a lot of shots that had no people in them, and it's just based on shapes and colors and forms, which is something I've never shot anything like this before. It's just a different way for me. So I decided to make a folder of all of those shots.
Great, they're all beautiful. Okay, so what I'm going to do, Steph, is switch the, I'm going to stop sharing on my side. Cool, you got it.
Okay. So this image is
Oh,
one from my most.
excuse me for one quick second. Sorry to interrupt already. Is that, folks, if you have questions for Steph, please put them in the chat, and I'm watching the chat here, and then I will at spaces ask her the questions. Okay. Sorry, Stephanie. It's all yours.
That's okay. I hope people have questions. I'd love to answer them. Okay, so this is from my moments folder, and I'm going to show the final image first, and then I'm going to go through what caught my eye and the steps I went through to get my final image. So what caught my eye here was this is taken in a church in Paris. And as we were walking into the building, this little girl she's got curly blonde hair, and the light was shining through her hair, which just really intrigued me. So I started following her. Actually, I made a beeline after her. She's very, very cute. She knew where she was going. She was raced right up to the front of the church. Her mother sat down over there. So I sat down across from them and one row back to get the best angle I could with my camera. And she was just totally enthralled. Kind of unusual to see a little girl that excited about classical music. Actually, the orchestra was a high school orchestra, and they were rehearsing. And she was, leading the orchestra. And then this guy with his big camera came and sat down, blocked my view right behind her. So as soon as he backed up, I managed to get the shot, but I wasn't sure I really got anything at all. And about that time, the mother and the little girl got up and left. So I moved up to where they were sitting and shot a couple of shots of the orchestra. And then lo and behold, the mother and little girl came back and they sat next to me, right in that same row. So I motioned to the mother and I said in my broken French that your little girl is beautiful. She said thank you. She didn't. She said thank you, but she didn't speak any English either. So I found out a little bit about her. The little girl is 5, and her father plays the violin. The little girl loves classical music, so every weekend her mother takes her to some venue to watch um, a classical presentation. And that's the story of this one.
Very cool. So we actually have a couple of questions. Deb Perry says she loves your moments. What's your secret to capturing people so candidly without them posing?
It's interesting. Actually, I have to say that not a single person in my moments folder knew I was shooting, taking shots of them. Sometimes I use my tilt screen on the back of my camera, so I'm not just pointing them right at them. And I don't know, they just don't notice me. I don't know. Do you know my secret, Nick?
No, I just know that when I stand next to you, they notice me and they never notice you. So, um,
I've been, yeah, go
oh,
ahead.
yeah, we have another question. Deborah wants to know, do you let people know that you're photographing their children?
This mother did know. She didn't seem to mind. There were a couple of people in the, in the church with cameras, and nope. I have certain times I don't shoot children. I don't shoot them in playgrounds. Um, I do it. I don't just aim my camera right at them.
Okay. See, on your next slide now, I can see that.
Okay. Most of these actually, I just realized are from Paris. And this is a trumpeter. I took this one in Saint Germain, which is a very happening place. As you can see, there's outdoor cafes and a lot of people strolling by, musical groups playing. It's really fun. We always go there when we go to Paris. And this musical group we've seen through the years. We always stop to listen to them. And the trumpeter, this night, the trumpeter caught my eye. So I stood there photographing him. And then he started moving towards the middle of the street. And fortunately, he just stepped right into this vanishing point in the back. It was perfect. I could have missed this shot if I hadn't got his trumpet completely in, so it's a little bit close. That's the story behind this one.
So Steph, can you talk a little about your settings on how you, so Stephanie has a different way that she approaches setting her camera up than usually what I teach. And it's actually it's another way of approaching manual mode, but she uses aperture priority and then the um, exposure compensation, right?
Right. So aperture priority. Usually when I'm walking around, I have it set at 5.6, but then I change it from there. And I use auto ISO. I use auto ISO because I want to be sure that my shutter speed is fast enough to catch what I'm looking for. And I'm not worried about noise. The Canon, I mean the Nikon does really well with noise.
That's great. So do you remember what the settings were for this particular photograph?
I can look and see. The trumpeter was, the ISO was, it was nighttime. My ISO was 3200 and it was f 1.8 and 125th of a second.
Right. So you're using the 50 millimeter 1.8 lens,
Yeah,
right?
this
Yeah.
is my 50 millimeter.
Right. David was asking about the mother in the previous section. It
Hmm.
she didn't speak great English. How were you able to figure out about the little girl and the
Oh,
whole
because
history?
I speak a little French, enough French to ask her the questions and to be able to understand what she said. I can't carry a real involved conversation, but I can understand a few words.
Yeah, great. And then Deb, yeah, this was the evening, and no, she did not use flash. And and Karen wants to know, does Larry photograph with you, or does he, does he go with you when you take your photos? So this is an interesting question.
It
So
is an interesting
yeah,
question. I'm very lucky. Larry, he doesn't shoot. When we first started traveling, I think he had a point and shoot, but he hasn't had one in years. He takes pictures with his iPhone, and he's very, very patient with me. I don't know how he has the patience, but he just will stay there for as long as it takes for me to get, what I'm looking for. Um, yeah,
you know,
I'm
and,
very, very lucky.
and on workshops, he turns into a model sometimes too.
Oh, that's right. He,
Yeah,
he models. He's a really good sport.
yeah. Okay, I think that's it on the questions so far.
Okay. This one, I took. It looks like I was at very close range, but I zoomed on this one. I was far enough back. But we were going into a museum. It's a very wonderful museum, and it's actually an experience. It's called Atelier des Lumières, and I have a gallery on my website, which I'll show you some of those when we get towards the end. But what caught my eye was the way this sister was with her little brother. She was just so tender with him. This was my first shot. So as you can see, I had motion blur. She was moving around. My final shot was this one, and I took one more. That was the last shot. So just 3 frames, and this is what came up. What I really like about this one is the negative space right in here with her little hands on his face. You can see how tender she was with them. Questions?
Yes, we have one. Can you talk a little about which Nikon you use? And so you've had a little bit of a journey in your Nikon cameras over the last few years. So maybe Claire is asking about that.
Okay, I shot with a D750 for many years. And then about 6 months ago, I decided to go with a mirrorless just to cut down on the weight. So right now I've got a Z6 and I'm very happy with it. Very, very happy with it. I don't use flash.
And then Jill's asking how'd you get the background totally black?
I darkened that afterwards. I just brought up the shadows in the back just to
Okay,
block
great.
out any.
And do you keep all your shots like you just showed for the little children? Karen, if you could clarify that question a little bit, then we can, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking there. So if you can clarify that again, we'll answer it a little later. Okay,
Ready for the next
next.
one?
Yeah,
Okay, I really pre-visualized this shot before I went. I wanted a shot of a couple kissing at the train station, which I thought might be easy to find at a train station, but actually it wasn't. We went up and down. It's in Paris, but we went up and down the rows, and then finally at the end, I saw this couple kissing. So that's what drew my attention. and I started shooting them. A lot of people walking by. When a train came in, there was a lot of people along this walkway, so it wasn't obvious that I had the camera pointed directly at them. But when there was nobody coming in, there was just me standing out there with my camera pointed to them. And I was probably shooting them for about 10 minutes. They didn't notice a thing. But you see from this shot, I wasn't totally happy with this angle. Changed my perspective over here. And then this was the final with the vanishing point. This was probably the riskiest chance I took because I had to move over really close to them with my camera pointed directly at them to get this shot and get this angle. But they never looked up.
Steph, the question, Karen clarified it. So one of the things that folks ask me in classes that, do I keep all my pictures or do I delete them? And I just have this phobia of deleting anything. So I even keep the really bad ones. But what's your philosophy? Do you keep all your shots? Do you, the ones that, or the ones that don't work out, you delete them, or what do you do?
No, I hardly delete because I'm always afraid I'm going to delete something that I wish I kept. I've got a lot in my catalog.
Yeah, I know that feeling. David also wants to know about roughly how far away were you from the couple when you get this final shot?
Oh, very, very close. I don't know, maybe 7 feet, 6 feet, really close.
Okay, great.
And let me see um, I was trying to see how close it was. Yeah, it looks like it was pretty close.
Do you happen to have the your settings for
Yeah,
this one? Yeah.
I shot this with a 16 to 35, and I shot it at 35 millimeters, but my ISO was 400 at f4, and it was 1/125th of a second.
Cool.
This one was at the d'Orsay Museum, and what caught my eye here was this window. We were walking through the galleries, and I just looked out and saw the Eiffel Tower and people going up to the window taking shots. So I stood there for a while, waiting for something interesting to happen. I'm not sure what, but this wasn't it. So I kind of gave up on having people coming up to the window and just took this shot of the Eiffel Tower and buildings in front. I was about to go. I was there for a long time. I'd say 15 minutes, maybe longer. When this woman came up, so I figured I'd give her a chance. I liked the way the light was shining behind her back. Then when she struck this pose, took it. I liked the curve of her back and her fingers silhouetted against the wall. Can't take this shot anymore because now they've put a screen up over the window and they've got flags hanging out there, so you really can't see through the window at all anymore.
So one of the things that's a common thread, I think, for you is patience, right?
Patience, absolutely. I know Sue and Diana talked about patience, and you have to have a lot of patience with street photography. It's not like walk out your door and just start shooting in the street. Usually I find a background and then wait for somebody to walk into it, like maybe a shaft of light. This one was in a bookstore in Paris. And what struck me here was that it's a Taschen bookstore, and we've been in there many, many times, but I've never seen a child in here before. It's not like interesting for children. But this little boy was just totally engrossed in the book, turning the pages and really studying it. So I started shooting him. Once again, nobody noticed me, but I did use my tilt screen with this one. I was pretty close. So I took a few more shots. I didn't like this one. Didn't like the background at all. This one didn't work with the people in the background. This one is actually, that's his mother and father standing there. But this one I didn't like because of the this blurry thing that was up close to the lens. So this one turned out to be the one that I kept, the first shot. I love the way the light, his face is reflected from the light coming from the book.
Steph, do you ever use a tripod? Street shooting, you probably don't, right?
No, street shooting I don't. I'd say I only would use a tripod for sunrise or sunset if I was going out for that purpose. But if I was just walking around at that time of day, no, I wouldn't take a tripod. You definitely couldn't get these shots with a tripod.
Good. Yeah. And Deb that's asking a question is that so, and I kind of half know the answer to this. So in the, before you got your new Nikon, when you were shooting for moments in black and white, you were shooting in color and then converting. But now you're shooting in the Z6. When you look through the viewfinder, what are you seeing? You still seeing in black and white now?
No, I'm seeing in color.
Okay.
I see the only time I saw in black and white, and I'm going to try it again, was when we went to Paris. I loved it. It gives you a whole different perspective.
Great. And Sherry, the answer to your question about the tilt screen is that we're on most of our cameras, we have a display. The tilt screen is that display will actually pop out and tilt up so that in certain circumstances, you can use that in live view to shoot the photograph. Okay.
It's a little bit hard. It's a little bit hard to frame through the tilt screen. That's it takes practice.
Okay, back to you, Steph.
Okay. Now this was a circumstance where I shot this in black and white. This was shot in Paris this last time we were there, and then I converted some of the images to color when I got home and edited. But this was a surprise. I was shooting in black and white. I wasn't thinking about blue hour, but it was actually, this is definitely a color shot. So what caught my attention in this one was we were walking home one night and to our apartment in Paris. We rented, we don't own it. And I heard a saxophone playing. So we went to search it out and see where the sound was coming from. This was the first shot I took. This was my first view of him. With the light and the acoustics in here are incredible. A lot of musicians come and play here. You can see his hat there waiting for somebody to put some money in. So I tried to center the pyramid in the back through the doorway, archway. Got up a little closer here. This one I kind of liked with the people and their shadows, but you can't see that he's playing a saxophone, just merged in there. This one I thought was interesting with the girl's face lit with her iPhone. This one you can see the saxophone, but I didn't like the pole coming right out of the middle of his head. And this was my final shot that at least it's the one in editing that I like the best. I like the way he's totally outlined here. And I love this man just walking through the light.
Yeah, that light there
Okay.
is wonderful. Yeah, so the Z6 is is a full frame camera, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and you use the edges of your frame as compositional elements of design, or do you
Oh,
crop it all?
oh, wait. No, I very, very seldom crop unless it's just something I know when I'm shooting that I'm not going to be able to get the shot without um, cropping afterwards. But very, very seldom.
Okay, great. That was one of the questions.
One of the things that Joe taught both Nick and I to check the frames, check all the edges, go all the way around.
Border Patrol.
Border patrol, and it's easy to easy to forget something. This one, this was at the Atelier de Lumiere, that show I was telling you about, and I loved it so much that we went back a second time. And the second time we went, we saw a doorway that we hadn't gone through before. So we opened the door, and there was this great staircase. I loved all the shapes and everything. Started shooting the staircase, both people walking down the stairs. And then I liked the sign in the background, so I tried to get that in a better position. And just as I got it so that you could see the whole sign, the guy opened the door. So I was just totally ready, and there he was.
So what is Joe saying?
When
When you,
you when you get ready, when you get lucky, be ready.
exactly.
Yeah, that was one of those moments. This one is in the d'Orsay Museum, and what caught my eye here was the red wall by the staircase. This over here is an elevator shaft, which I really wasn't paying much attention to in this position. But when the elevator went up and got out of the way, you could see the red wall through the mesh, which really intrigued me. Staircase and people walking up and down. So I decided to wait until I just had one person, hopefully walking right in here. There she is. It didn't just happen. I waited quite a while. I took a lot of shots. So I put together some silhouettes to show you. I'm not going to talk about each one of them, but I have quite a few silhouettes. What I look for in silhouette is the negative space, separating them in here. Otherwise, you end up with just a black blob. This was in Paris. It was one shot. Just got it lucky at that time. This is also in Paris. This wasn't just lucky. I moved over to the left to get the negative space in here.
Steph, we have a question about your choice of lenses. So do you switch lenses when you're indoors versus outdoors? How do you choose which lens you're using? Like for example, you had the 16-35, and then at another point you use the 51.8, and I think you also had I forget what the other lens that you had with the medium zoom. So how?
24. I used a 24-120 as
That's
my
right.
walk around lens, and I love that lens. I don't carry equipment with me. I don't take a bunch of lenses. I have to make it simple. I'm not really technical, and I just want to concentrate on the composition and finding things. But if I had to stop and think about which lens and change my lenses, I think I would lose a lot. So no, I walk around right now with the mirrorless. I have a 24-70. I wish it was a little longer, but I'm finding I don't miss the difference between the 70 and 120. So I have that lens and I have a 35 millimeter. And just the two, I'm able to put the 35 millimeter in my purse or vice versa, and it's very easy to get around.
How fast is your 35 millimeter lens?
1.8.
1.8. So if you were going to shoot at night, then you would just
I,
automatically choose the 35 1.8, right?
yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
cool. I recognize this photo.
Yes, you do. You were right next to me. This is in the Berlin train station, and here I stood there for quite a while trying to just get some separation with the people silhouetted here. Yeah, we had a good time, didn't we, Nick?
Did a lot of shooting in that train station.
Yes, we did.
So folks, train stations, MBTA stations, where there are a lot of people and different scenes and scenery, it's always great for great shots. And also, um, a lot of train stations will have big windows where you have shafts of light coming through, and creates great composition.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun. Next silhouette was also taken in Berlin in a workshop that's with Nick. This one I got at a museum in Japan, Kanazawa. I'll show you what got my eye. This was the first thing I saw. All the shapes and lines, and I love this. So I kind of hung around waiting for somebody. That's a staircase in the back, walkway. And this was the first scene I saw of people walking by. And actually, I kind of like this one now that I'm looking back at it. But it's the guy in his reflection. So he started walking over to this space. That's when I shot it, right there. So you have to anticipate. You anticipate back here, you know he's going forward, and just be ready as soon as he steps into the space. I love doing that. It's a lot of fun. Another silhouette. This was taken at a hotel in Japan. What I got my eye here was the shapes of the curtains in the background and the light coming through, silhouettes. I saw this waitress heading towards that shaft in the middle, got ready, took it right here, right in this triangle. She's got a lot of negative space around her body and her arms. Another one with silhouettes at the World Trade Center in New York in a workshop with Joe and Nick. No, Nick, I don't think you were on this workshop. I'm not sure.
No, I wasn't there on that one.
Yeah. Um, this was my first view when we stepped in. Very, very busy. So I just moved over to try to single out just one little scene. And I like the silhouettes and the light.
So on this one, when did you decide to click the shutter? Were you waiting for people to be in the light or the shadows to be in the shafts of light?
Yes, I was looking at the shadows and the people's shadows walking by, like here. It would have been good actually if there was just one person here, one shadow. But this is as close as I got.
Very nice.
Another silhouette. This is actually the same bookstore as I took that shot of the little boy. He was standing right here, and the other one. So this was the final one. this is what caught my eye, the silhouette in the right. But I had, if there are any words in an image, I try to get the whole word, and this word over here was cut off. So I got back farther, I got all of the wordage, but the silhouette. This is what happens if you don't have negative space around your subject. So that didn't work. And then I got this one. But he backed up, and the other guy on the left, and I was ready. Another silhouette, which I don't remember if you showed this in the beginning or not, Nick.
That was actually that was on the title slide, and I actually sent it out to everybody in the email
Yeah,
links. Yep.
right. So this is a new art experience in Paris. It opened up in 2018. It's very, very cool. It's set in an old foundry, so there's just metal, wrought iron, metal staircases and walkways. And the way they do it is they project art on the walls, like Van Gogh or Chagall, Klimt, and they project the images on the ceiling, the floor, the walls, and there's music playing. It's fabulous. Stayed in here for 4 hours shooting. It was amazing, and then we went back a second time and stayed there 4 more hours. But I have some of the shots to show you what it's like inside. I don't think they're going to be able to open for a long time with social distancing though, because you can see everybody's just either sit sit on right next to each other. That's very, very cool.
That little girl almost looked like she was part of the artwork.
I know, I know, and that's her mother back here watching her, watching the artwork. It was
How many,
particularly it was particularly good because it was Christmas vacation and there were a lot of little children just really running around all over. They loved it, loved it, loved it. So what I tried to show in this gallery was the different ways that people experience the exhibit. Gives you a good idea of what it's like. This one is from my Paris in the Winter Light. And this is shot in black and white. And what I was trying to show was the starkness of winter and the structure of the trees. So the merry-go-round was closed. This was my first view of it, all deserted, which might have been okay to show what it's like in the winter light. I wanted something more, so I started shooting the horses. And then I saw this little boy making a beeline towards the merry-go-round. I watched him. Mother definitely saw me, probably thought I was just shooting the merry-go-round. And then this was the one I kept. It looks like he's just longing to get on the merry-go-round, but it's not open today. And I like this negative space under his foot. This was obviously Paris. I'll show you my first shot. What caught my eye was the Seine flowing over the walkway. In all the times we've been to Paris, we've never seen this happen before. The water was very, very high. So I centered the Eiffel Tower between the branches and waited. The people walking by, runners, bicyclists. And then this guy came by with a coat, which looked like he might have promised. But then this is the one I liked the best. I liked it because his coat opened up. You could see the negative space of his legs. And I love this right here.
Steph, if you could bounce back and forth between those two pictures and just the difference that that negative space and that coat makes all the difference in the world. And all it is, what, a second between those two shots.
Second. Just this gesture of the coat opening.
And Jill mentioned that she loved the texture on the bark
Thank
of the
you.
trees. Yeah.
People write the people write on the trees, carve on them, unfortunately. This is one of my favorite shots. I think they're all really interesting characters. They're playing Boule, which is a game that is played in most parks in Paris. You always see a group of guys, sometimes women too, playing Boule. When I walked up with my camera, they looked up and I held my camera up to see if it was okay. They all nodded, so I knew I could do whatever I wanted here. Moved around so that I was a little closer to them, trying to single just a couple out. This one didn't work, so I cut off the feet. Border Patrol that I wasn't paying attention to. One, too. This probably would have been good. I love the cigar and the guys that he's smoking. This was a little better, but I didn't like the way this guy back here wasn't completely showing, and I didn't get the feet all the way in. I really concentrated hard on this shot. I got all of them separated, and I love the guy just walking by, looking at them. This one holding a cigarette, smoking a cigar. I think it really tells the story. So I just picked out some from Paris in the Winterlight, but I think, Nick, you probably have gone through most of these.
Yeah, Steph, we have a quick question on the bark. If we,
Uh-huh.
um, so how did you lighten the bark on the trees? Because some were darker.
Let me see. Let me go back and look at that. Do you mean the dark area in
Yeah,
here? But the light was shining in here. The
yeah.
light was coming in the side.
But if you go to the final shot, so go to the, yeah, that one there. Okay, yeah, it looks the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyhow, these are some of the ones that I took in black and white. Each one of these, I actually stood there for a pretty long time. This one, waiting for somebody to be clearly shown in here. So they weren't merging into a pole.
How many shots would you have taken total when you were standing in that one place? 20, 30, 40?
um, oh, I don't know. Could have been 20, 30.
Yeah.
Probably not more than that, but it was fun. The whole time was fun. Just standing there shooting. This is actually a very unusual shot to be able to get. This is Artist Corner in Montmartre in Paris. and it's usually you can't see from one end to the other because it's all filled with artists wanting to take, paint your picture. I've never seen it empty, but it really looks like winter and everybody's gone. It's raining very, very hard. And my Nikon mirrorless held up great because I couldn't hold an umbrella and shoot too. So I just had a hood on and my camera with a little plastic bag on it. That's all. This is the last photograph I'm going to show, my final shot. This one I spent about a half hour on. This is where I started. This was the orange bridge caught my eye through the trees. So I was here for a while watching the people go by, but I couldn't get a clear shot because of the pine needles. So I just shot straight up and got a silhouette of the tree branches. I tried vertical, but the same problem. So I decided to just shoot the bridge. I liked the metal work on the railing. That was my focus. And much to my surprise, Larry brought some koi food along with us. We have a koi pond at home, and you see lots of koi in ponds in Japan. So he brought some koi food. You can see he had just thrown it in the water. The fish are all swarming around. And a pigeon landed right there. This was this is what I was dealing with. So I kept shooting, and then I got my wish, just the one fish in the background. In post-processing, I took the branches out. There was no way I could avoid them and have the railing centered. So that's it.
Great. So I have another question for you, but folks, as we wrap up, if you can list a couple more questions, we'd be happy to address those. Mickey has a question for you, Steph, and Mickey does, yes. And she wants to know, does the camera ever leave your eye when you're trying to catch the shot? So, for example, like with those that great the those bars, I can't even think of what it is, where the gate was, and you caught the guy walking in front of it. I mean, so does the camera ever leave your eye?
No, as long as I'm shooting, I'm looking through my lens.
Yeah,
Is that what you mean?
yeah, I think that's what she means. Yes. So I guess it goes back to what your so you're always constantly thinking about what's your next shot, right? You never like take one shot and you're done, right?
No, I usually don't take one shot and I'm done. Joe will attest to that.
That was a great question. Then Deb Perry would like to know, do you have any photographers that you're inspired by? And do you shoot with both? So this is a conversation that Deb and I've had in Revelation for her. Do you shoot with both eyes open? So first, the photographers that you're inspired by, besides Joe and myself. You're supposed to laugh at that one.
Okay, I'm laughing. Yes, Cartier-Bresson is one that I really, really admire, and Willie Ronis. He's a Paris photographer. See, those are the main ones that that I'm very interested in.
And
What was
another,
the other one? Shoot with
um,
both eyes?
yeah, it was both eyes. Do you shoot with both eyes open?
No, I think I do close my left eye.
Deborah, I'm not sure what your question was there. And Jackie's asking, said, great. This was awesome. Thank you so much. Great photos. was awesome to see what she appreciated your mistakes. And one of the things I do in my classes too is that I show those shots that don't work, because it's interesting is that when students are learning how to shoot, they think that the good shot was you just kind of walked up and took the shot, versus working it and seeing it. And one of the things that was great to hear as you spoke, Steph, is very consistent, obviously, with what Joe teaches and very much what I teach. And I learned everything that I teach about composition, elements, visual design from Joe. And, you know, talking about negative space and the light and using the borders and edges of your frame, that sort of thing. So that's great.
Mhm.
So I have another question. Let's see. So you tend to, you seem to take pictures with people more
Yes, I
than
love,
so you're more of a street photographer than a landscape photographer or a scene photographer.
definitely a street photographer, and not, I would say, I seldom take just a landscape without a person in it.
And then Margaret's asking, most of these shots are with a 35mm lens or smaller. And actually, no, the smallest is 35mm, right?
The smallest, well, my other lens is 24 to 70.
Oh, that's true. Yes, yes.
And when I had my D750, I had a 24-120. So no, there's 20, 24. I've taken them.
Okay, cool. Any other questions, folks? Well, Joe and Mickey happen to be listening to, Steph, and he just wanted me to let you know, he sent me a quick text, and that he was very impressed with all your work and with your presentation, and that you are a wonderful photographer. So congratulations,
Thank,
and thank you so much. We really appreciated you taking the time out. I just want everybody to know that 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 Steph jumped all over it. She was really happy to share some of her work and some of her inspiration and thoughts with you. We really appreciate it, Steph.
thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so everybody, thank you very much. I have not come up with what we're going to do next week yet. I have like 3 or 4 different subjects in mind, and I'll let you know. I'll send it out on Monday. And keep in mind and I'll be sending this out over the next couple of days. On May 29th, Joe is going to do a Ask Joe session. So I'm going to ask you to send a photo or send a question. And if you send a question, he'll answer your questions. And it could be on his presentation that he did a couple weeks ago, or it could be on any question photographically. And then you can also send in a photograph if you want to have him critique it, and we will critique, or he will critique a certain bunch of them. So that's coming up too. And also Alona Hart is going to share some of her photographs with you on the 22nd of May from some of her travels. And so we got a few more weeks of this to go. So Stephanie, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. This was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Thank you all.